Are your everyday routines holding your child back? Discover the subtle mistakes even caring parents make. Hi, Hero. My name is Janice Fitzmuller. I am an educational neuroscientist and college admissions advisor. Initially, I focused on the developing brain and what impacts a child's temperament, behavior, and cognitive ability. Then I realized that children need some things schools don't teach. Now, I guide parents on empowering their children and nurturing their full potential. In today's episode, I'm going to show you how hidden habits can undermine your child's confidence and show you how a few small changes can set them up for lifelong success. So here's the roadmap. First, we're going to look at abuse and neglect and how it impacts brain growth, the impact of emotional neglect and lack of support, why emotional suppression is more harmful than you think. We'll dive into practical examples, brain science, and share real stories. Let's start with the obvious but often misunderstood: abuse and neglect. When a child is made to feel worthless, or worse, blamed for their mistreatment, it can stunt their brain growth. Chronic stress from abuse and neglect not only sends cortisol into the bloodstream, but it also impacts development of the hippocampus and the amygdala, the vital areas for learning and managing emotions. Abuse and neglect causes the hippocampus and the amygdala, which is the center for learning and memory, as well as managing emotions, to be stunted. Think of a child who is constantly criticized or ignored. Over time, they may stop believing they're capable or even worthy of success. I experienced this growing up. On the emotional level, my feelings were not considered. And it took me a long time to realize that I went through life thinking that nobody cared really about how I felt. And when I realized the worthiness that I had in myself, it was a game changer. Now I feel sorry for the family members who are still stunted emotionally because of the kind of environment, although positive in some ways, caused a lot of stunting on the emotional level. 2, lack of support and emotional neglect. Now let's talk about what every parent faces: being stretched too thin. It makes them unavailable emotionally for their children because they're going through their own chronic stress themselves. And even though they may not intend to make their children feel unimportant, this is what happens because they don't have the mental, or what I call, when I'm overwhelmed and somebody's asking something of me, I was like, I don't even have the brain space to process what you're saying right now. And basically, it's because I just need to chill out, be by myself, process whatever it is I'm going through, and so I can fill up my cup so that I can share with others. And as parents, this happens, but how to handle it so that it doesn't negatively impact the child is a skill that needs to be developed. So if you see yourself in this explanation, don't feel bad because you're not alone. When a child feels ignored at home, the downside is they may latch onto peers or other people who give them the emotional support or attention that they need, but they may not have their best interest at heart. So they're basically, what they're doing is seeking validation from people outside of the family, or if they're lucky, they can find that validation from somebody who does have their best interests at heart, like maybe a grandparent or an aunt and an uncle. But a lot of times they're going to look for it from their peers. Emotional suppression. Suppressing a child's individuality or emotions by telling them to tighten up or to stop being dramatic can really hurt their self-worth. When kids aren't allowed to feel or express themselves, they don't develop the skills they need to process their feelings. This can lead to outbursts or withdrawal because they just don't know what they're feeling. For example, a child who is punished may start to bottle up feelings and then act out in inappropriate ways. This is something that happens a lot. A child, for example, who is punished for crying may start bottling up their feelings, but they have to come out in some way, and a lot of times they come out in inappropriate ways, maybe an outburst in school, maybe overreacting to, and when I say overreacting, let's say another child licks their tongue at them or says something that they don't like and they pummel the kid because of frustration that they're feeling from having to suppress their feelings in other areas. I remember hearing my mother say, "Stop crying before I give you something to cry about," when I was hurt. I had to bottle up my feelings, which goes back to feeling that emotional neglect that I mentioned in the prior example. Now let me tell you, mental health professionals help process information and understand why we feel what we feel and the origins of that. Personally, I believe that even in the best of circumstances, it's good to, as young adults, children who are maybe in high school or college, but they have to want to do this, just for they understand how they process what they went through as children growing up, not to suggest that the parents did anything wrong, but because people are individuals. You may have a positive intent when you pass something on to your child, but they may receive it in a different way. And so that dynamic is something I think all of us as human beings experience growing up. And just to understand where we're coming from with our feelings and to realize that our parents have their journey and they're doing the best they can with what they have. And so processes or behaviors don't repeat themselves transgenerationally. And I mean, this is where it starts. And another thing is, when it comes to stress and chronic stress and constant oppression, that alters the brain chemistry and it can also change the DNA. And that's how certain illnesses can get passed down from one generation to the next. But I mean, what I'm trying to do now is to show you how it expands from being told not to cry or being punished for being a child, basically behaving at an age-appropriate manner and the ramifications around it. Another hidden habit that can undermine child's confidence is the use of negative labels. They stick. When you call a child difficult or picky, they start to own these words, and it isn't about hurt feelings. It's just science. Negative labels reinforce neural connections, neural pathways that make these part of the child's identity. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Instead of describing a specific behavior, encourage growth. For example, instead of saying, "You're so stubborn," try, "I see you have strong opinions. Let's talk about it." This is another example of how I believe young adults can benefit from going to therapy, not because they feel like something is wrong, but to understand themselves and to maybe nix that self-fulfilling prophecy in the bud before it becomes full bloom as an adult. Because even as children, before they become adults, these labels will affect them and affect their behavior, how they perform in school and what have you. And it doesn't do anything to help them learn how to process their feelings and speak up about it. A family whose daughter was labeled difficult at school and at home began shifting the conversation to focus on her strengths and needs rather than difficult moments. So basically, when she had a difficult time dealing with whatever, rather than saying, "Don't be so difficult," the family started to unpack what it was that was bothering this child so that they could understand, open up channels of communication, and shepherd her out of that difficult situation by giving her tools to help her navigate challenges and adversity, which in turn built up her confidence. So in a few months, she started speaking up, she started making new friends, and her grades improved. The science is clear that when we change our habits, our children's change too. So think about what you're saying and look at ways to approach it in a positive way because your children are modeling your behavior. And this is not to say something is wrong with you, this is to say that you're human. All right, so here are some tips. Don't ignore your own stress because children sense that. Take care of yourself so you can show up for them emotionally. Even if it means saying, "Look, give me some time to wind down. I need me time right now so that I can be there for you. Just give me some time." And children will understand that. Be aware of your language too. Use descriptive, non-labeling words. so that children don't process negative terms or what they may perceive as being negative, even though that's not your intent. Or maybe you're saying something out of frustration and you do mean it. Take a step back and think of ways in which you can turn the message around. And don't expect this to happen overnight. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other, one thing at a time. Focus on one thing, and then when, like, maybe it's just not ignore your stress. Start there and work on that. And when you find yourself in a better place, then work on being aware of your language. The next thing is to validate emotions. Help your child name what they're feeling and help them talk it through. The best way to do that is to be aware of your own, because you have, like I said, we're all human. You have busy, messy emotions too. And that's why it's important to go back to the first tip of not ignoring your own stress. And then replace criticism with curiosity. Ask questions and listen. And that'll help you turn around and improve the communication and enhance your child's confidence. So let's recap. Abuse and neglect hurt brain growth. They stunt it, as well as the child's self-worth. Emotional neglect leaves children unsupported and makes them feel insecure. Suppressing emotion leads to poor emotional skills, and negative labels become self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you find this video helpful and you know someone who can benefit from it, please like, share, and if you haven't yet, subscribe. And I'll see you in the next video.